The Galactic Council all simultaneously vomited and shit themselves at the mere mention of visiting Earth. Taurus took a deep breath. It had to be done. Humanity was too violent, advancing too quickly. They had to be assessed. Taurus strode onto the Bajorian star cruiser Xanadu's bridge, approaching the human diplomat Patrick Scorer. I suppose you received the same report I did. Earth is destabilizing the galaxy's power structures. With its incessant warring and rapid technological growth, this cannot continue unchecked. We must investigate your planet immediately. Patrick stiffened. I'm well aware of the situation, but you have to understand we only fight to protect ourselves, and our innovation is our greatest strength. Judge us by our actions, not our capabilities. Taurus shook his head. Your species is its capabilities. Uncontrolled humanity will either conquer the galaxy or destroy itself, trying. There is no middle ground. The Council has no choice but to intervene before it's too late. The Xanadu launched, racing through hyperspace towards the human homeworld. Patrick watched the stars blur past, an uneasy feeling growing in his gut. Failure here meant not just the end of humanity's galactic ambitions, but potentially the end of their very existence. He had to get this right, or billions would pay the price. As Earth came into view, he steeled himself for the monumental task ahead, knowing the survival of his species hung in the balance. As the Xanadu drew closer to Earth, a soft ping from Patrick's personal communication device caught his attention. He glanced down, seeing an encrypted message from an old friend, Captain Jack Hudson of the Earth Defense Force. Patrick and Jack had served together years ago, and he knew that Jack would only contact him directly if the situation was dire. Patrick opened the message, his eyes scanning the text quickly. Jack's words confirmed his worst fears. The EDF had intercepted Galactic Council transmissions detailing plans to impose crippling sanctions on Earth, aiming to halt humanity's rapid technological advancement and economic growth. The message made it clear that tensions between Earth and the Council were at a tipping point. Patrick looked up, catching Taurus's gaze. The alien diplomat's agitation was evident as they entered Earth's solar system. Taurus's eyes widened in disbelief as he took in the sight before him, an extensive network of orbital defense platforms and a massive fleet of EDF warships surrounding the planet. It was a testament to humanity's military might and determination to protect their homeworld. Taurus, I can assure you that Earth's military is purely defensive, Patrick said, trying to keep his voice steady. We have no intention of attacking anyone. Taurus remained silent, his eyes fixed on the imposing display of human military power. Patrick could sense the growing unease in the air, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Suddenly alarms blared throughout the Xanadu, red lights flashing across the bridge. A squadron of EDF fighters, led by none other than Jack Hudson himself, was closing in on their position. Patrick's heart raced as he realized the gravity of the situation. A single misunderstanding could spark an all-out war between humanity and the Galactic Council. Taurus, assuming the worst, barked orders to the Xanadu's crew. Lock weapons on those fighters. Prepare to defend the ship. Patrick leaped into action, frantically trying to establish contact with Jack. He had to prevent this catastrophic misunderstanding before it was too late. The fate of Earth and the entire galaxy hung in the balance as Patrick raced against time to avert a war that could destroy everything he held dear. Patrick's fingers danced across his comms device, trying to establish a connection with Jack Hudson. Taurus barked at him to hurry as the Xanadu's weapon systems locked onto the approaching EDF fighters. Just as the tension reached a breaking point, Patrick broke through. Jack, it's Patrick. Stand down, I repeat. Stand down, Patrick yelled. I'm on a diplomatic mission with the Galactic Council. We're not a threat. There was a pause. Then Jack's gruff voice crackled over the comms. Copy that, Patrick. EDF fighters disengaging. But you better have a damn good explanation for this. Patrick breathed a sigh of relief as the fighters peeled away, escorting the Xanadu to a secure landing pad at EDF headquarters in New York City. As the ship touched down, Patrick glanced at Taurus, who was visibly shaken by the show of force. I assure you, Taurus, this is all a misunderstanding, Patrick said, trying to calm the alien diplomat. "Let me do the talking, and we'll get this sorted out." As they disembarked, a heavily armed contingent of EDF soldiers greeted them, led by General Marcus Graves. The grizzled veteran eyed Taurus with open distrust, his hand resting on his sidearm. "General Graves, I'm Patrick Scorer, the human diplomat assigned to this mission," Patrick said, extending his hand. "I apologize for the confusion, but we come in peace." Graves ignored Patrick's outstretched hand, instead addressing Taurus directly. "Let me make one thing clear, alien. Earth will not submit to the Council's demands. We're prepared to defend ourselves against any aggression." Taurus bristled at the general's tone. "Earth stands accused of violating galactic law. I demand to see evidence of your innocence." Patrick stepped between them, sensing the situation was about to escalate. "Gentlemen, please, I suggest a tour of Earth's major cities to demonstrate our peaceful intentions. Taurus, you'll see that we have nothing to hide." Graves grudgingly agreed, and they set off on a whirlwind tour of London, Tokyo, and Moscow. Taurus marveled at the gleaming skyscrapers, advanced public transit systems, and apparent lack of poverty and conflict. But he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. In Moscow, Patrick's personal comms device pinged with an urgent message from his sister, Dr. Emily Scorer. A renowned xenobiologist, Emily claimed to have uncovered evidence that the Galactic Council was manipulating less advanced species, keeping them subservient and dependent on the Council's technology. Patrick's mind raced as he read the message. If Emily was right, the Council's true motive was to prevent Earth from becoming a rival power. He had to find a way to convince Taurus of the Council's duplicity before it was too late. As they stepped out of the transport in Moscow's Red Square, Patrick pulled Taurus aside. "Taurus, there's something you need to know about the Galactic Council." Patrick pulled Taurus aside, his voice low and urgent. "Taurus, there's something you need to know about the Galactic Council. My sister, Dr. Emily Scorer, has uncovered evidence that they've been manipulating less advanced species for their own gain. We need to meet with her immediately." Classified documents, video recordings, proof that the Council has been actively sabotaging Earth's progress. If we don't act now, they'll keep us under their thumb forever. Patrick's voice was laced with conviction. Taurus hesitated for a moment before nodding. "All right, let's meet with your sister, but this better not be a trick." Patrick arranged a secret rendezvous at Emily's private research facility, nestled in the Swiss Alps. As they entered the compound, Emily greeted them with a grim expression. She led them to a secure room where she presented Taurus with a wealth of damning evidence against the Council. Taurus pored over the documents, his face growing more disturbed with each passing minute. Video recordings of Council members openly discussing their plans to undermine Earth's advancement played on a large screen, their words echoing in the silent room. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the facility. The sound of gunfire erupted from outside the room. Patrick, Taurus, and Emily exchanged worried glances as Marcus Reed, the facility's chief of security, burst through the door. "We've got company," Reed shouted over the din of the alarms. "Heavily armed mercenaries led by some Bajoran named Zarek. They're here for you." Patrick's blood ran cold. Zarek was a notorious Galactic Council operative, known for his ruthless efficiency in eliminating threats to the Council's power. The group raced through the facility's corridors, the sound of combat growing louder with each step. They burst into the hangar, where a sleek, high-speed hovercraft awaited them. Patrick leaped into the pilot's seat, Emily and Taurus close behind. As they sped away from the facility, Zarek's team emerged from the tree line, their weapons blazing. Bullets pinged off the hovercraft's armored exterior as Patrick pushed the vehicle to its limits, weaving through the treacherous mountain terrain. Patrick opened a comm channel to General Graves, his voice strained with urgency. "General, we need an emergency extraction now. Zarek's team is hot on our tail." Graves's reply crackled over the comm. "Copy that, Patrick. EDF dropship inbound to your location, ETA 2 minutes. Patrick gritted his teeth as he pushed the hovercraft harder, the engine whining under the strain. Zarek's team was closing in, their vehicles equipped with advanced weapons systems. The EDF dropship roared overhead, its powerful engines kicking up a maelstrom of snow and debris. Patrick angled the hovercraft towards the dropship, preparing for a daring mid-air extraction. Suddenly a barrage of missiles streaked from Zarek's vehicle, slamming into the hovercraft's rear. The vehicle lurched violently, warning alarms screaming in the cockpit. Patrick fought to keep the hovercraft steady as it careened towards the edge of a deep ravine. The dropship swooped low, its rear hatch open. Patrick, Taurus, and Emily leaped from the stricken hovercraft, landing hard on the dropship's deck as the hovercraft plummeted into the abyss below. As the dropship soared away from the pursuing mercenaries, Taurus slumped against the bulkhead, his face ashen. The reality of the Council's betrayal hit him like a physical blow, his loyalty to the organization he had served for so long crumbling in the face of the truth. The EDF dropship touched down on the landing pad, its engines whining as they powered down. Patrick, Taurus, and Emily disembarked, their faces grim. General Graves met them at the entrance to EDF headquarters, his jaw set. As they made their way to the command center, Taurus grabbed Patrick's arm, his eyes flashing with anger. "Why didn't you tell me about your sister's findings earlier?" he demanded. Patrick met Taurus's gaze steadily. "I needed you to see the evidence for yourself without any preconceptions. I wanted you to make an informed decision, not one based on my word alone." Taurus's grip loosened as he considered Patrick's words. He nodded slowly, his anger dissipating. "I see, you're right. The Council's betrayal is too great to ignore. I will help you expose their corruption." In the command center, Patrick and Taurus huddled around a holographic display, discussing their plan to present Emily's evidence to the leaders of the major galactic powers. General Graves listened intently, his brow furrowed. Suddenly alarms blared throughout the room. The holographic display flickered, then resolved into an image of Earth surrounded by a massive fleet of Galactic Council ships. At the center of the formation was the dreadnought GCS Enforcer, its weapons primed and ready. The Council fleet opened fire, their weapons cutting through Earth's orbital defenses like a hot knife through butter. The EDF fleet scrambled to respond, but they were hopelessly outgunned and outnumbered. Patrick watched in horror as the Council's ships rained destruction upon Earth's surface. Cities crumbled under the onslaught, millions of lives snuffed out in an instant. The command center shook as the bombardment intensified, the holographic display flickering with each impact. Patrick opened a comm channel to the Enforcer, his voice shaking with rage and desperation. "Admiral Zoran, this is Patrick Scorer of the Earth Defense Force. I implore you to cease fire immediately. We have evidence that the Council has been manipulating—" Zoran's face appeared on the screen, his features twisted in a sneer. "Save your breath, human. The Council has declared Earth a rogue planet. Your species has been deemed a threat to galactic peace. We have been ordered to annihilate you." Patrick's blood ran cold. He looked to Taurus, who stood frozen in shock. General Graves pounded his fist on the console, his face contorted in anger. Taurus nodded, his eyes hardening with resolve. "I agree, but what can we do against a force like that?" As the battle raged above them, Patrick and Taurus locked eyes, both realizing the same grim truth. They had to find a way to turn the tide of the war, to rally the other galactic powers to their cause. If they failed, Earth and everything they held dear would be lost forever. Patrick's heart raced as he and Taurus boarded the EDS Shadow, the sleek black ship virtually invisible against the backdrop of space. Captain Jack Hudson sat at the controls, his hands flying over the console as he prepared for their daring mission. "All right, boys," Jack said, his voice gruff but determined. "Let's show these Council bastards what happens when they mess with Earth." The Shadow slipped silently through the chaos of the battle, its advanced cloaking technology rendering it undetectable to the Council's sensors. As they approached the massive hulk of the GCS Enforcer, Patrick and Taurus exchanged a tense glance, both knowing the fate of Earth rested on their shoulders. "We'll need to split up once we're aboard," Patrick said, checking the charge on his EMP grenade. "I'll take the power core. You hit the fire control center. We'll only have one shot at this." Taurus nodded, his grip tightening on the prototype plasma rifle. "Understood, let's make it count." The Shadow docked with the Enforcer, its airlock sealing with a hiss. Patrick and Taurus moved quickly, their footsteps echoing through the deserted corridors of the dreadnought. They reached a junction and split up, each heading towards their target. Patrick crept through the bowels of the ship, his senses on high alert. As he neared the power core, a sudden movement caught his eye. Zarek stepped out from the shadows, a cruel smile playing across his lips. "Going somewhere, human?" Zarek sneered, his hand reaching for his weapon. Patrick didn't hesitate. He launched himself at Zarek, the two men colliding in a brutal clash of fists and fury. They traded blows, each strike fueled by desperation and rage. Patrick ducked under a vicious right hook, slamming his knee into Zarek's gut. The Bajoran doubled over, gasping for breath, and Patrick seized his chance. He slammed the EMP grenade onto the power core and activated it, the device humming with barely contained energy. On the other side of the ship, Taurus fought his way through a phalanx of elite Consul guards, their plasma bolts sizzling past his head. He returned fire with his own rifle, the prototype weapon spitting out a stream of searing blue plasma. The guards fell one by one, their armor no match for the devastating power of Taurus's weapon. Taurus burst into the fire control center, his eyes scanning the room for his target. He spotted the main targeting array and sprinted towards it, dodging a hail of plasma fire from the remaining guards. With a triumphant roar, Taurus slammed his fist into the control panel, sparks flying as the delicate circuitry shattered under the blow. Alarms blared throughout the Enforcer as the dreadnought's weapons systems went offline. On the bridge, Admiral Zoran let out a howl of rage, his eyes blazing with hatred as he watched the EDF fleet seize the advantage. Patrick and Taurus raced back to the Shadow, the ship's engines already humming with power. They leaped aboard, Jack hitting the thrusters and sending them rocketing away from the crippled dreadnought. Behind them, the GCS Enforcer shuddered under the onslaught of EDF missiles, its hull buckling and tearing as the once mighty ship was reduced to a flaming wreck. The Shadow banked hard, narrowly avoiding a collision with a Consul frigate as it sped back towards the heart of the battle. The Shadow streaked through the void, racing towards Mars. Patrick and Taurus, their faces grim, prepared for the emergency summit that would decide the fate of the galaxy. As they touched down on the red planet's surface, they were greeted by a delegation of leaders from the major galactic powers. The Arcturians, the Syrians, the Andromedans, all had answered the call to arms against the Galactic Council's tyranny. In the great hall of the Martian capital, Patrick took the stage. His voice rang out clear and strong as he presented the evidence of the Council's corruption. He spoke of the classified documents, the video recordings, the first-hand accounts of manipulation and deceit. Taurus stepped forward, his eyes hard. As a former Council member, he knew their tactics all too well. He spoke of the lies, the propaganda, the ruthless suppression of dissent. The leaders listened, their faces growing darker with each revelation. When Patrick and Taurus had finished, the hall erupted in a cacophony of voices. The leaders argued, debated, and finally reached a consensus. They would stand united against the Council, mobilizing their military forces for a final showdown. Back on Earth, the streets of New York, London, and Tokyo had become war zones. General Graves and the EDF fought tooth and nail against the Council's invasion force, led by the ruthless General Zaxar. Human soldiers and resistance fighters ducked behind rubble, trading fire with the Council's advanced weaponry. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air, searing holes in concrete and flesh alike. The stench of burnt metal and charred bodies hung heavy in the air. Patrick, Taurus, and Jack Hudson returned to Earth, a contingent of Allied ships at their back. They targeted the Council's command posts and supply lines, their weapons slicing through the enemy's defenses like a scalpel. In the heart of New York City, Patrick and Taurus confronted General Zaxar in the ruins of a once great skyscraper. The Bajoran sneered, his eyes glinting with malice. "You think you can defeat the Council?" Zaxar spat, his hand tightening on his plasma rifle. "We are the future of the galaxy. You are nothing but relics of a bygone age." Patrick and Taurus didn't waste words. They leaped forward, their weapons flashing. Zaxar fought like a cornered animal, all fury and desperation, but Patrick and Taurus were fueled by a righteous anger, a determination to see justice done. In the end, Zaxar lay broken at their feet, his weapon shattered beside him. Patrick pressed his boot to the Bajoran's chest, his eyes hard. Across the globe, the Council's forces threw down their weapons, their will to fight broken. The Allied ships descended from the skies, their hulls gleaming in the sun. In the days that followed, the Allied Galactic powers convened a war crimes tribunal. The Council's leaders were brought before the court, their crimes laid bare for all to see. The evidence was damning, the testimony unassailable. As the verdict was read, Patrick and Taurus exchanged a glance. They had fought hard for this moment, had sacrificed everything to see justice done. But they knew that the road ahead would be long and difficult. As the leaders of the galactic powers gathered for the War Crimes Tribunal, the mood was somber yet hopeful. The Galactic Council's reign of terror was finally over, and justice would be served. But as the proceedings began, a stunned silence fell over the room. Admiral Zoran, the ruthless Bajoran commander who had led the assault on Earth, was still alive. The revelation sent shockwaves through the assembled leaders. Zoran had been presumed dead, his ship destroyed in the climactic battle above Earth. But now, grainy footage showed him rallying a group of loyalist council forces, their faces twisted with fanatical devotion. Patrick and Taurus exchanged grim looks as the full extent of Zoran's plan became clear. The rogue admiral had seized control of a remote asteroid base where he was developing a new weapon of unimaginable power, a weapon capable of destroying entire planets. There was no time to waste. Patrick and Taurus sprang into action, assembling a joint strike force of the best soldiers and ships from Earth and its allies. They knew they had to act fast before Zoran could unleash his devastating weapon on an unsuspecting galaxy. As the strike force approached the asteroid base, Patrick felt a sense of dread settle over him. The base was heavily fortified, bristling with weapons emplacements and shielded by powerful energy fields. But he knew they had no choice. They had to stop Zoran, no matter the cost. The assault began with a furious barrage of missiles and plasma fire, the strike force's ships pounding the base's defenses with everything they had. Patrick, Taurus, and Captain Jack Hudson led a team of elite EDF commandos in a daring ground assault, fighting their way through waves of fanatical Council loyalists. The battle was intense and brutal, a desperate struggle for survival against an enemy that knew no fear. The commandos pushed forward, inch by bloody inch, their weapons flashing in the dim light of the asteroid's tunnels. As they neared the heart of the base, the true horror of Zoran's plan became clear. The asteroid was home to a massive, artificially intelligent warship, a behemoth of sleek metal and deadly weaponry. The ship was nearing completion, its systems coming online with a sinister hum. Patrick and his team knew they had to act fast. They fought their way to the warship's control center, facing off against Zoran and his most fanatical guards. The battle was fierce and desperate, a whirlwind of flashing blades and searing plasma. In the end, Patrick and Taurus stood victorious over Zoran's broken body, but their triumph was short-lived. With his dying breath, the rogue admiral initiated the warship's activation sequence. The countdown began, the ship's power core thrumming with building energy. Patrick and his team raced against time, fighting their way through the warship's defenses to reach the power core. They knew they had only one chance to stop the ship before it became fully operational. With mere seconds to spare, they managed to overload the core, sending a cascading failure through the ship's systems. The warship shuddered and bucked, explosions ripping through its hull as the power core went critical. Patrick and his team barely made it out alive, fleeing the doomed base as the asteroid shattered around them. The joint strike force suffered heavy casualties, their ships battered and smoking as they limped away from the destruction. But the threat was ended. Zoran was dead and his terrible weapon destroyed. The galaxy was safe for now. But as Patrick looked out at the stars, He knew that the price of peace had been high, too high. As the dust settled and the fires were extinguished across Earth's ravaged cities, Patrick and Taurus stood amidst the rubble, their faces grim with the weight of responsibility. The Galactic Council had been defeated, but at a terrible cost. Millions had perished, and the once gleaming metropolises of humanity lay in ruins. But there was no time for mourning. The galaxy needed healing, and it fell to Patrick and Taurus to lead the charge. They were tasked with forging a new galactic alliance, one built on the principles of peace, cooperation, and equality. It was a daunting task, but one they were determined to see through. As they began the arduous process of drafting treaties and establishing diplomatic channels, a troubling pattern emerged. Whispers of a shadowy organization, known only as the Void Collective, began to surface in their investigations. This group, composed of influential figures from various species, seemed to have had a hand in the Galactic Council's corruption, pulling strings from behind the scenes. Patrick and Taurus exchanged worried glances as they pored over the evidence. The Void Collective's motives were unclear, but one thing was certain. They sought to sow chaos and discord throughout the galaxy, weakening the bonds between species and leaving them vulnerable to manipulation. Determined to unravel the truth, Patrick and Taurus assembled a team of their most trusted allies. Together, they began a clandestine investigation into the Void Collective, tracing its tendrils of influence across the stars. They infiltrated seedy spaceports and hacked into encrypted databases, piecing together a puzzle that grew more disturbing with each new revelation. As they delved deeper into the Void Collective's machinations, they uncovered a web of conspiracy that reached into the highest echelons of power. Key figures in the newly formed Galactic Alliance, individuals they had once trusted, were implicated in the collective's schemes. The betrayal cut deep, but Patrick and Taurus knew they couldn't afford to let their emotions cloud their judgment. The true horror of the Void Collective's plan became apparent when they stumbled upon an ancient text, hidden deep within a forgotten archive. The text spoke of a malevolent entity known as the Devourer, a being of immense power that fed on the life force of entire civilizations. The Void Collective, it seemed, believed that by unleashing the Devourer, they could cleanse the galaxy of weakness and impurity, leaving only the strongest to rule. Patrick and Taurus knew they were racing against time. If the Void Collective succeeded in awakening the Devourer, the galaxy would be plunged into an age of darkness and despair. They redoubled their efforts, working tirelessly to unravel the Collective's plans and find a way to stop the Devourer's awakening. As they chased down leads and confronted shadowy figures in dimly lit alleyways, Patrick and Taurus could feel the weight of the galaxy's fate pressing down upon them. They knew that failure was not an option. The future of every sentient being in the universe rested on their shoulders, and they were determined to see their mission through to the end. The Void Collective's agents seemed to be always one step ahead, leaving a trail of destruction and death in their wake. Patrick and Taurus found themselves locked in a deadly game of cat and mouse, their every move countered by the Collective's twisted machinations. But they refused to give up, pushing themselves to the brink of exhaustion as they raced to uncover the location of the Devourer's prison. Patrick and Taurus raced through the star-streaked void, their hearts pounding with the weight of their mission. Behind them, a massive fleet of Earth and Galactic Alliance ships followed, the most powerful force ever assembled. But even with all their might, fear gripped the hearts of every soldier, every pilot. They were heading to the ancient, forgotten world where the Devourer slept, to confront the Void Collective in a battle that would decide the fate of the galaxy. As they neared the planet, a sense of dread washed over Patrick. The world was shrouded in an unnatural darkness, as if the very stars were afraid to shine upon its surface. The fleet took up positions around the planet, weapons primed and ready. Patrick and Taurus, along with a strike team of Earth's most elite warriors, descended to the surface in a heavily armed dropship. The moment they touched down, all hell broke loose. The Void Collective's forces swarmed out from hidden bases, their weapons spitting death and destruction. The strike team fought back with everything they had, plasma bolts and explosions lighting up the darkness. Patrick and Taurus led the charge, their weapons blazing, cutting a path through the enemy lines. They battled their way deeper into the Void Collective's stronghold, the resistance growing fiercer with every step. The air crackled with energy, the ground shaking beneath their feet. And then they saw it, a massive chamber, pulsing with an eerie, malevolent light. The Devourer's prison. Patrick and Taurus fought their way inside, only to stop dead in their tracks. The chamber was empty, the Devourer's cage shattered. In that moment, they realized the horrible truth. They were too late. The Devourer's awakening had already begun. A deep, resonant voice filled the chamber, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Foolish mortals," it boomed, "you cannot stop what has already begun. The Devourer will consume all, and the galaxy will be reborn in darkness." Patrick and Taurus looked at each other, a grim understanding passing between them. They knew what they had to do. The only way to stop the Devourer was to seal it away forever, at the cost of their own lives. They activated their comms, broadcasting to the fleet above. "This is Patrick, Scorer, and Taurus," Patrick said, his voice steady despite the fear gripping his heart. "The Devourer is awakening. We have to seal it away, but we won't be coming back." There was a moment of silence, then a chorus of voices filled the comms, their friends, their comrades, all pleading with them to find another way. But Patrick and Taurus knew there was no other choice. They said their goodbyes, their hearts heavy with the weight of their sacrifice. Then they turned to face the Devourer's chamber, ready to do what must be done. The Void Collective's leaders burst into the chamber, their eyes wild with fear and rage. "You cannot do this," they screamed, leveling their weapons at Patrick and Taurus. But Patrick and Taurus were already moving. They charged forward, their bodies glowing with an unearthly light as they began the ritual to seal the Devourer. The Void Collective's leaders fired, their shots tearing through the air, but Patrick and Taurus didn't falter. The chamber shook with the force of the Devourer's awakening, the darkness growing thicker, more oppressive. Patrick and Taurus fought through the pain, pouring every ounce of their strength and will into the seal. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.